newest styles of architecture. On the right, our second tallest, Trump International Hotel and Tower, created with contextualism. If you notice, looking up at it, it's got 3 terraces going up the side. Those match the height of surrounding buildings. The first one matches the Wrigley building right next door, we just left. The third one matches the apartment building between those two. And the second terrace matches the Mather Tower, which is the white telescope building across the river. Again, its 3 terraces are matching 3 neighbors. On top of that, it's sandwiched between an all-white and an all-black building. So this grayish glass and steel creates a transitional element between those 2 extremes. Once again, contextualism paying tribute to its context. The motto is of a place, for a place, by a place. If you're doing it right, it should only work right here. It won't even work 2 blocks away. That's the beauty of this style design. Now, if you are like me, and after the tour, you do want to move to Chicago, you might want to move into these buildings for a studio or 1-bedroom. The listings inside go for $1,300 to $2,000 a month. May not sound cheap depending on where you're from, but for downtown Chicago with a river view, that's the best deal you'll find. I can guarantee you. You probably recognize these buildings anyway. They're coming up on the right. 2 giant corn cobs. Marina City Towers. Iconic apartments from the 1960s. And cheap too. Well, back when they were built in the 60s, not many other apartments downtown, so these are also self-sustainable. If you head inside, you can still find a fully functional grocery and liquor store, movie theater, bowling alley, swimming pool. The parking is on the lower levels. There are restaurants and the House of Blues beneath that. And following this bridge on the right-hand side, you can see where it gets its name. It's an actual functional marina in the basement. You can park your boat here too. You can access all of that from the building without changing out your pajamas. It's an introvert's dream. You can also get a better view of the parking down here. Cars have only come out the backside twice. Don't worry, both intentional. One was a Steve McQueen movie called The Hunter. The other was an Allstate commercial. We did some of these job at valet park buildings. Never think your job is stressful. Remember that. Left-hand side, we got a small concrete building with 5-5 at the top. 5-5 West Wacker. We call it the Danny DeVito building because it's short, stuffy, between 2 supermodels. It is a brutalist building, which doesn't have to do with its brutal, boxy appearance like you might think. It's the material it's made of. Brutalism comes from the French term béton brut, part of that French. That means raw concrete. Exactly how it comes from Marina City. Also brutalism. 2 very different designs, classified the same way. A little lower to the left is our Riverwalk. Fairly new addition in Chicago. Phase 3 finished in 2016. Cost $112 million. And this last travel by TV for a drink like the Tiny Tap. The amphitheater coming up on the left. There's spots to go fishing or dip your kayak in. But my favorite addition with the Riverwalk was a fish hotel. It sounds weird, but we got to a spot where fish can hide from predators and whales. And because of that, since the 70s, 60 more species of fish have come to the Chicago River. So it's actually doing its job. It's preparing the ecosystem and establish a better relationship between the waterways, which is important. Because unfortunately, we didn't always use them for beautiful architecture boat tours. In fact, the main thing we used this river for was sewage back in the day. So we're trying to better than that, the very least. And that's ironic because most of our success is owed to the river and the lake. We've got 20% of the world's liquid freshwater in the Great Lakes system behind us. Very convenient connection to the Midwest, East Coast, even Canada. Maybe a little too convenient. Where do you think all our alcohol came from during Prohibition? Our report, Canada. And to the south, the Chicago River eventually connects all the way down to the Mississippi River and then Gulf of Mexico. So this was a very convenient spot to meet up and trade back in the day. That's how we got our start, fur trade. In fact, even the name Chicago comes from this river. Chicago comes from the Potawatomi word Chicago. That means stinkweed. It's a type of onion that grew along our river banks before there were buildings here. So, New York's the Big Apple. Chicago is literally the little stinky onion. That's where we get our name from. It's 100% true. Now, onion would not exist without the river either. So this has always been a very important part of our identity, even before we were a city. Coming up on the right-hand side, following the bridge, is a very cool style of architecture. It came about in the mid-1920s. Merchandise Mart on the right-hand side, a great example of Art Deco style architecture. It's got sturdy Indiana limestone as its base material. It's all about verticality. Draws your eyes upward. Makes it almost seem bigger than it is. I'm almost trying to be the biggest and best in the block. Draw your attention here. Another way it does that is in the sides. It's also ornamentation. If you look just below the windows over here, you can see gold diamonds. They're at the top too. That's the glistening lamp of the roaring 20s coming out in building 1. Think great gas speed. That's what Art Deco buildings tend to embody. They're all about the opulence of the 20s. They're all showboat a little bit. We'll talk more about the history behind Art Deco and several other styles in a moment, but first, get those cameras up. On the opposite side of Franklin Street Bridge, we get a beautiful trophy case of architecture at Wolf Point, where the 3 branches of the river meet. It's a beautiful view. Take it in.
I know, it's good for you, but you're doing a really good job, okay? No more high? Okay, it's
First
okay.
building we want to point out on the left.
Okay.
We got a curved glass building, the new Bean building. This was Ferris Bueller's dad's office from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But the curve of that building matches the curve of the river. And it's hard to tell in this light, but the glass has a greenish bluish tint that also matches the river's shade. That's contextualism. There's another contextualist building in front of us right now, a Y-shaped building, 150 North Riverside. Now the Y pays tribute to where we are because Wolf Point, where the 3 branches of the river meet, literally makes a Y. If you look at a map of Chicago, you get a bird's eye view. So the Y pays tribute to the Y at the Y. That's why. But when you make a Y-shaped building, some structural difficulties come with it. And the big one here in Chicago is called sway. We are the windy city, in the Round Lake effect wind, which means our taller buildings, or Y-shaped ones, literally sway in that wind. We're going to talk about 3 different methods of sway reduction on the tour today. The buildings cut back that experience with. What this building uses is one of the newest and strangest options, called inertial slosh dampeners. Inside, towards the top, are 12 massive concrete tanks filled with 160,000 gallons of water. When it gets hit with a gust of wind, the water in those tanks naturally hits the far wall, sloshes its way back, and brings those tanks with it as a counterbalance, which means it balances out most of the sway against the wind all by itself. It's a very cool, but also confusing method of sway reduction. If you don't get it, don't worry. The next 2 we'll talk about are easier to understand if you're not an engineer. But this building is also a great example of what contemporary style buildings look like. We got another great example coming up on the left. The Bank of America building. Had to keep the Riverwalk free for the Riverwalk project. Back in the day, that meant you miss out on your space. But not anymore, thanks to modern technology, which is what modern buildings are all about. All you got to do now is vault the 3rd floor of your building with steel I-beams, cover them up with stainless steel. You can build all the way to the top of your lot, no issues. I look pretty good doing it too. A great time skip of how modern technology is pushing architecture into the future. On this next section of the tour, we're going back in time instead, talking about how architecture has evolved alongside history. Now, following the Great Chicago Fire in the 1880s, we began rebuilding our city with what's called revivalism. This is basically copying and pasting European designs to prove that we're beautiful, like Europe. Great example is the Wrigley building where we started. That's based off a cathedral in Spain. In the mid-1920s, we get original with Art Deco style. We got great examples on either side of the river following this bridge. When we're making Art Deco buildings, we're looking optimistically to the 20s, or to the future. Pouring all our money and resources into buildings to be the biggest and best because life's great this month. What could go wrong? Give you an idea. Left-hand side, Civic Opera building, opened 2 weeks after the stock market crashed in 1929. Only made it for 3 years before it went bankrupt. The Great Depression comes along and cuts short that party. And shortly following the Great Depression comes World War II. So there's a big break in building from the 30s to the 50s. But when we come back to building afterwards, buildings look a lot different than Art Deco. Coming up on the right are 2 giant black steel boxes. These are modernist buildings from the 1950s. After World War II, it's been returned to the workforce, so 8 office buildings quit. East Van Row takes architecture back to its 3 most basic building blocks: modernism, skeleton, skin, and space. That's all you need. The skeleton is the steel aluminum frame that hold these buildings up. They wear their structure right on their sleeve. They're office buildings, so they're all business. Not trying to wow you like Art Deco does. They just gotta be functional. That also means the skin, which was the decoration of Art Deco, isn't necessary here. It's just floor-to-ceiling windows in this case. And the space are the plazas that surround them. Now, these are functional buildings, but the design is not very human. So the plazas are where you can enjoy your lunch, be around nature, feel like more than a cog in the machine. That's the psychological effect of space. There's no agenda behind it. It allows room for you to exist as you are, which is necessary if you live in a city or work in a giant black sterile box. The next jump in architecture is a pretty big one. We go from black boxes in the 60s to white boxes in the 70s. That's international style. You pull that out of any place in the world in the 70s. Architecturally, there's almost no change. It's pretty much the same. The biggest difference is why we're making them. We're no longer sticking out in order to be functional. We are now fitting in with a global scheme of architecture, doing what everybody else is. And fitting in continues into the 80s, which is why contextualism doubles down on fitting in. Now, contextualism, I think, is the most important style. Because if you're not careful, all these different styles will make your city feel more like buildings than a city. They're all competing for your individual attention. You lose sight of the big picture and you forget your context. So contextualist buildings actively flip the equation. They sacrifice their own identity, their ego, to collaborate rather than compete. They blend all the styles together to create neighborhoods and place buildings. It's also alive and well today as a style. Which is important because this specific building you want to see on the left here. It's a black building, stair-stepping its way to the tallest in Chicago, the king of Chicago. Skyline, Sears Tower. Now, I love what Chuck is doing. We are going just 2 blocks to the south here, so we can get an even better picture of this building for you guys. I think this is one of the best shots you can get on the tour or on the river in general. Now, something you might have also caught, I call this the Sears Tower. I know officially it's called the Willis. It had a name change in 2009 when the Willis Insurance Group bought it, but not a single Chicagoan called it.
Oh, that's just a really tall
building. The Willis Tower, that's a dead giveaway to the tourists. You're not a tourist, remember? You're a Chicagoan in training. So no matter what that name gets changed to, and it will be changed again in 2029, that's going for big. Unless that name is the Sears, I want to go that's the Sears. Always will be here in Chicago. And the reason we're so stubborn, when the Sears was built in 1974, it wasn't just the tallest building in Chicago, or even America. It was the tallest building in the world. Held that record for 23 years, up into the 90s. And is now the 3rd tallest in America. And we are making our U-turn here. Beautiful view of our name. The tallest building in the city. Left-hand side, the Sears Tower. Now, it is the 3rd tallest in America now, which is sadly because those antennas don't help you much. But you may notice from this angle, the Sears Tower has a stair-step look to it. The building jumps in, continues up in different spots. That is our second method of reducing the sway of your building. And it's still the standard for tall buildings everywhere. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is currently the world's tallest, does the exact same thing. And the Sears here was the very first to do it. It is called a bundled tube design. The 2 guys that designed it, Bruce Graham and Dr. Bosworth Kahn, sat down to talk about what it should look like in a diner. So no pencil or paper to sketch anything out. What they did have was Bruce Graham cigarettes. So they pulled 9 cigarettes out of the package, bundled them together, placed them all at staggered heights. That's what they went with. 9 structures, like the 9 cigarettes. You get a bird's eye view looking down, looks like a tic-tac-toe board with all the squares or cigarettes at different heights. That means the top 2 that have the antenna sway the most in the wind, but there are 7 structures around the outside of those 2, bundling together to hold it in place. It's harder to move 9 than 1. There's strength in numbers. That's the general premise of a bundled tube design. To break that down a little different, that means the Sears Tower is built to sway. You can feel it. On a normal day, the average sway to Sears Tower is about 6 inches. Sounds like a lot? Typically, you can't feel it. But on our windiest day, Sears Tower can sway up to 18 inches any direction, a total of 3 feet. You can feel it, especially on the elevator ride up. So keep in mind, you can feel this building move. It's built that way. Don't freak out too much. And I think effectively 10 times worse than the cow jokes. So if you didn't laugh at cowspiracy, I don't care. I like that one. It stays in. But that's not the only World's Fair we held here in Chicago. We held a second one in 1933 called the Century of Progress. Excuse me, in the back. Please no standing on the benches. Please no standing on the benches. Thank you so much. Now again, not the only World's Fair we held here. We had a second one in 1933 called the Century of Progress. That one was around Museum Campus. To the south, the Adler Planetarium, Shed Aquarium, and Field Museum were all added in anticipation of that second World's Fair. Now, we don't talk about it nearly as much because the first one comes from the map. 1933, that's the Great Depression. Nobody showed up. But it did give Americans something to look forward to during a dark time in our country's past. It gave us a beautiful museum campus area and the tweaking. So I think it's worth mentioning, at least in my book. Now, museum campus might be worth a visit these days, even if you're not interested in the museums, because that's where you can get the best view of the skyline. It's just around the outside of the Adler Planetarium. You don't even need tickets to go into the Adler. Just head out to where it is, type it in there, head out to Museum Campus Peninsula, turn around, look back. Every building you're looking for in one nice condensed skyline photo. So if you want to skip our observation decks and the line and price tag that come with them, just head out to Museum Campus. Get a beautiful skyline view for free. And also, Chicago weather loves to do a fun little switcheroo on you. It's actually not an official trip to Chicago unless you experience all 4 seasons in one visit. So there's a good chance that the weather might not be as nice as it was today, and our museums are going to give you something great to look at without feeling like you're burning a vacation day to those elements. Now, it's also worth mentioning 2 of our best museums aren't even around the campus. The Museum of Science and Industry is down in Jackson Park. That's the most interactive, hands-on museum. It's what I typically recommend for families with little kids or hyperactive adults like me. Lots to hold your attention all day. A lot of experiments, fun stuff. But I think the best of our museums is on Michigan Avenue, the Art Institute. That is frequently rated one of the top 5 museums in the world. If you only see one, see that one. All sorts of art we can maybe recognize, like American Gothic, the unenthused couple, the Pitchfork. That's in there. That 1920s Cafe, Nighthawks. That's one of my favorites. Van Gogh, Picasso, Monet, Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida Kahlo, Andy Warhol. Again, you name them, they're in the Art Institute. Now, something I also like to mention as we're leaving the lake, because a lot of locals don't even realize this fact. This is not the original shoreline of Lake Michigan. The original shoreline used to go all the way up to Michigan Ave, where we end the tour. That's why it's called that. The waves of Lake Michigan used to come up onto the street. So if you're doing the mental math, you might be wondering, where'd all this land come from? After the Great Chicago Fire, we had all this debris and rubble we had no clue what to do with. We collected that rubble, pushed it down into Lake Michigan, built on top of it. Museum Campus, Grant Park, Millennium Park, maybe to the left and right of the boat. Almost all of that is built upon debris and rubble from the Great Chicago Fire. So we took that travesty, would have taken down any other city, instead used it as an opportunity to build more Chicago the second time around. That's just the Chicago way. However, it also created an opportunity for some of our stranger characters to take advantage. The neighborhood on the right is called Streeterville. It's named after George Cap Streeter. He was a gun runner and a con artist who shipwrecked his boat along a sandbar there in the 1880s. Shortly after, the city disposed of their debris and rubble, filled the whole area in. People came to it looking to buy that new property. Streeter would greet them, go in his boat, forge a cheeky little land deed, and sell them the land he did not own. He called this the U.S. Independent District of Lake Michigan, and he called himself the mayor. None of that's true. Very illegal. The person who actually owned this land wasn't happy he was selling it. So the police came here to break up those land fraud schemes. Streeter fought the police off with birdshot from his shotgun and boiling pots of water that his wife would throw to the side of the boat at the cops. Neither one of those are technically legal, which means even after that standoff, they couldn't charge him with attempted murder. Apparently it wasn't legal to home alone someone back in the day either, so couldn't bring him in. The thing that eventually brought Streeter down all the way in 1921 was pneumonia. And the mayor of Chicago showed up at his funeral just to make sure he was actually dead. They say crime doesn't pay, but we named the whole neighborhood after that guy, so I'm not quite sure about that. And if that's not enough, in the heart of that neighborhood, there is still a statue to memorialize Streeter to this day. Save your trip to that con man statue. He looks like Mr. Monopoly, one of our weirdest characters, but shaped this whole area and what it is today. We got 2 of my favorite architectural tidbits left, and then we'll get you guys out for the rest of your vacation. The first one's going to come into view around the rounded edge of the Sheridan Hotel, to the right of that French Gothic revivalism style. You're looking for an onion dome on a building, the Intercontinental Hotel. Technicolor tonight. But the interesting fact about it isn't the onion dome, it's that smokestack just sticking out the right-hand side. Back when we built the Intercontinental Hotel in the 1920s, we thought Zeppelin travel would be how we got around in the future, giant blimps or dirigibles. So that smokestack was originally a spot where you could tie off your Zeppelin, enter the hotel, have a valet park or ticket elsewhere. That's a blimp dock on the side of the Intercontinental Hotel. Unfortunately, the Hindenburg crash happened right after it's built. We realized Blimps the city Real bad idea. Never use flat brakes. In fact, there's only 25 blimps in the world right now total. But that's a very fun way of thinking from the 1920s that's still preserved in the architecture of modern day. And the last architectural exhibit I like has to do with the building in front of us. Once again, our second tallest in the city, Trump Tower, but is created by the world's tallest architect, Adrian Smith, who's only 5'7". I had to shout out a fellow short kid. That's not where he gets the name. He's called that because he created the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. It's the same general design as this one. In fact, this building was a prototype. But there is one noticeable difference. The world's tallest, twice the size. Imagine two Trump Towers stacked on top of one another. That's the exact height of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And even at half the height, it's still Chicago's second tallest. Gives you an idea of how impossibly tall that standard would set in Dubai. Now, some housekeeping things before the end of the tour. First and foremost, we ask that you guys please remain seated or braced during our dock procedure. That's for your own safety as you come into the dock visible. So prepare yourselves for that. The ramp will then come down. I'll be the first one to cross it. When you see that, perfect time to stand up and follow me down. I'll be waiting for you at the base of that ramp, so if you have any suggestions, directions, tips, tricks, comments, concerns, what have you, I'm able and happy to field all of it at the base of that ramp in a moment. You know, you had a lot of tour options, different companies you could have chose from, but you chose a family-run company, Bud Down. Spent your Tuesday night with me. I'm grateful for that. I hope you're grateful for the tour you got. If there's gratitude left over after all that's said and done, I'll be able and happy to accept it at the base of that ramp in a moment, in the old-fashioned way, one of those smooth little handshakes, or via two-arc time. Come find what you guys. One real quick thing, guys. You guys are going to love this last part. Don't clap for me yet. Don't. What do I guess? I don't care. But you will want to hear this last part, I promise you. I hope regardless, everybody feels like they got more than their money's worth here today, because we learned a lot about Chicago in 45 minutes. For example, the innovative architecture behind a lot of these buildings that catch your eye, several styles throughout history. The characters and events of Chicago's past that have given us our nicknames and shaped us, and who we are today. And most importantly, you guys learned everything you need to fit in with the locals. What to eat, see, do, drink, where the nightlife is, when's get to deep dish, where the best view of the skyline is, what's it called, the Sears Tower. The only thing left to do is to upgrade you guys from Chicagoans in training to the real deal. So, about the power invested in me. It's a Chicago tour guide. Legally speaking, zero power. But play along with me here. I hereby proclaim everybody aboard this boat as honorary Chicagoans yourselves. Go forth, spread the good news of Wendella, Jack of all trades, and our wonderful city, Chicago. Thank you, guys.
I love you! Yeah!
All right, wasn't that worth the wait? All right, now, a couple of things. Like I said, if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, tips, tricks, what have you, I'll be at the base of that ramp in just a moment, happy to point you the right way. This should go